Hello, welcome. My name is Michael deBraga. I'm an associate professor teaching stream at UTM, and my colleague and I, Christopher Eaton, are delighted to offer you an opportunity to take a course which I think you will enjoy quite immensely and also learn quite a bit. The focus of the course is really to explore how science is interpreted by the public at large, and how some scientists have failed to communicate effectively what it is that the issue at hand might be actually contributing. And for example, one of the things we look at is climate change and the impacts that it has had on society, and how scientists have tried to communicate these challenges. And one of the things that has come out of the climate change debate over the years has been that there's a controversy. There's a deep controversy that scientists are uncertain as to whether or not climate change is a real entity, whether there's significant negative consequences that will result from the continued changes that are ongoing, and whether or not humans are actually the major culprit to this. And the reality is that there is no controversy among scientists, but the perception is very different. And I wouldn't be surprised if many of you would believe that there is a controversy. Climate change is a chronic issue. It's something that we've had to deal with for decades now, and we've been burying our heads in the sand to try and avoid understanding it. Climate change is just one example. There are other instances where scientific information is misrepresented or is presented in a manner that causes uncertainty or confusion. Currently, the pandemic has been one of the major issues that have been influenced by the way the information is being presented, whether it's being presented by the popular media, and if so, what is the media choosing to present, or what angle is it choosing to present, and how does that impact on what people believe is relevant information and what people believe is not relevant. It's become politicized, which is certainly something that science never tries to explore, but it is definitely something we will look at, and we will do this from the point of view of case studies, so that you'll be able to experience how different venues, how different methods of communicating information are potentially miscommunicated. And Chris, if you want to jump in.
My name is Chris Eaton. I'm an assistant professor at UTM. I come at this from a very different perspective in that my concentration is in writing and communication. So I'm looking at this from the perspective of somebody who is looking at how this information gets portrayed outwards, from the science as it originally stands and was communicated, right through the multiple venues through which we receive this information. And one of my really intense interests as a teacher is making sure that students have an opportunity to grapple with this in a really practical way. So at the forefront of a lot of the conversations socially that we're experiencing is climate change and medicine. We can't avoid those conversations. It's around us all the time. But how we make sense of that is really complex. So we're hoping in the course to get you not only thinking about these issues, but actually engaging with them in really practical ways. How information gets communicated through one venue in a more scientific way, but then it gets kind of diluted as the chain of command goes along. So you'll have the news outlets or then social media, and the way that all those avenues are taking the same information but communicating it fundamentally differently, and how we can not only make sense of that, but how we react to it. So I think through the course, the goal is that you're not only going to be a passive observer of these things, but that you're actually going to be able to play around with the ideas and really get into some pretty intense discussions around how do we make sense of this and how can we do better as not only scientists, but as human beings.
Absolutely. I think the idea on how to communicate our understanding of events in our lives, events that are very, very much a focus of society in the present, and will only continue to become more relevant as we go forward. In some cases, what we also have to recognize is that science is always working in the background, trying to explore different methods or different approaches to dealing with human issues, whether it's dealing with disease, whether it's dealing with technology, whether it's dealing with climate or geologic-based issues. Science is always working in the background, but it seldom gets airtime, if you will, unless it becomes a major event. And one of the things we have to also concern ourselves with is that the pandemic has pretty much dominated the discourse in society at present. I mean, with good reason. It's clearly impacted the entire world, but it's only a symptom of a much, much larger issue. And the climate change is actually the chronic issue that has actually influenced the pandemic. In fact, we could go as far as to suggest that if not for climate change, the pandemic would not have resulted the way it has. And there's an expectation, and epidemiologists have been predicting this for over a decade now. And this pandemic was predicted as recently as 5 or 6 years ago. And the expectation is that there will be others. We are not free from this. Once we address the vaccine is not the panacea, it's not going to solve all our problems. And sometimes there's this perspective, this perception in the way the information is communicated to us, that once some event occurs, in other words, once the vaccine is developed, we'll all be fine. We'll certainly be better off, but we need to recognize what is the cause of this. And science has failed to communicate that effectively. And what hopefully we can do in this course is make you guys more fully aware of the responsibility scientists have in communicating these events in a manner that people recognize that science is not finding answers to things, but it's actually asking questions and recognizing that the answers can change with new information. It bothers people immensely when you hear things. The AstraZeneca example recently, and the miscommunication around how effective or ineffective it might be, or how dangerous it might be with respect to people having adverse side effects and so on. Again, all of this is not unique, is not new to science. This happens all the time, but the miscommunication has resulted in panic. So these are things that we will definitely be looking at very closely in this course.
We both really love working with students, and not only working with you in your writing and your communication and the way that you're interpreting science, but we are really interested in getting to know you as people and working with you as people. So we are very much looking forward to seeing you next year.